You break your leg. Not a clean break. A shattering one. The kind that ends things. There is no hospital, no cast, no painkillers beyond chewed bark and the steady hands of someone kneeling beside you. In every direction, danger. Your group needs to move. You cannot. For most of human history, this should have been the end of your story. That is the assumption most people carry around without ever examining it. Survival of the fittest. We were taught. The weak get left behind. The slow get eaten. It sounds efficient. It sounds like nature. It is also, according to the bones themselves, mostly wrong. Roughly 45,000 years ago, in a cave in what is now northern Iraq, a man died somewhere between his 40s and 50s. Old, by the standards of his time. His skeleton was found in the 1950s by the archaeologist Ralph Selecki at a site called Shanidar Cave, and it should not have existed at all. His right arm had been amputated above the elbow, decades before his death. The bone healed smooth at the stump. He was blind in one eye. He had survived a skull fracture that would have left him disoriented, possibly deaf on one side. His joints were riddled with what doctors today call osteoarthritis, the kind of bone-on-bone wear that makes ordinary walking agony. He is known simply as Shanidar I, and he lived for years, maybe decades, after injuries that should have killed him almost immediately. How does a one-armed, partially blind man with crippled joints survive in an Ice Age landscape full of predators without a single modern convenience? He does not do it alone. That is the only explanation that fits the evidence. Someone fed him when he could not chew tough meat himself. Someone helped him move when the group traveled. Someone, for years, decided that his life was worth the trouble of preserving. This is not an isolated case. In France, at a site called La Chapelle-aux-Saints, another skeleton tells a similar story. An older man, most of his teeth lost long before death, his spine and hips warped by severe arthritis. He could not have hunted. He may not have been able to chew solid food at all in his final years. And yet, he lived on, likely sustained on food that had been softened or pre-chewed for him by someone else. Then there is Romito II, a skeleton unearthed in a cave in southern Italy, dated to around 10,000 years ago. The paleoanthropologist David Freyer, who studied the remains, identified a form of dwarfism that would have left this young man with short, disproportionate limbs, unable to keep pace with able-bodied hunters chasing game across rough terrain. He was around 17 when he died, 17 years old, in a hunter-gatherer world, having never been able to contribute to the hunt the way everyone around him could. Notice the pattern. Different continents, different tens of thousands of years apart, different injuries and conditions entirely. The same outcome, over and over. The group carried its most vulnerable members instead of leaving them behind. Researchers even built a formal method around this question, because bones alone can be deceiving. A skeleton with severe disease doesn't automatically prove that someone was cared for. The bioarchaeologist Lorna Tilley developed what she calls the bioarchaeology of care, a framework for reading a skeleton and asking a precise question. Could this person have survived this long, with this condition, without sustained help from others? For Shanidar I, for the old man at La Chapelle-aux-Saints, for the young man at Romito, the answer keeps coming back the same way. No, not alone. So picture it, not as an abstraction, but as an actual afternoon. A small band moves across a cold, open landscape, maybe 20 or 30 people in total, everyone related to everyone else in some way, by blood or by decades of shared fire. Among them is a man who cannot see out of one eye and has one arm. The ground is uneven, the wind is sharp. He walks slower than the others, and the group's pace bends around him without anyone needing to discuss it. Someone younger walks a half step behind him, ready to catch an elbow if he stumbles. At the night's camp, someone tears his meat into smaller pieces before handing it over, so that his remaining teeth and his weakened jaw can manage it. Nobody frames this as sacrifice. It is simply what you do, because he is one of yours, and because the whole point of moving as a group instead of alone was always this. Here is the counterintuitive part, the part that upends the whole survival of the fittest, weak get left behind story most of us grew up with. Caring for the injured, the elderly, and the disabled was not a soft luxury that early humans indulged in once survival was already secure. It may have been one of the actual engines of human survival. Think about what an old, injured, or disabled member of a group carries that a young, healthy hunter does not. decades of memory. Which berries are poisonous? Where water pools even in a drought year? How to survive a winter that only comes once in a generation? How to set a bone, treat a wound, calm a crying infant. At 3 a.m. A group that keeps its most experienced and vulnerable members alive keeps their knowledge alive too. A group that abandons them at the first sign of weakness loses that knowledge the moment it walks away. Across enough generations, across enough winters, the groups that cared for their injured may simply have outsurvived the groups that didn't. Compassion, in other words, was not opposed to survival. It may have been a survival strategy in its own right, quietly selected for, generation after generation, until it became something close to instinct. This also reframes what disability actually meant in the deep past. It did not automatically mean uselessness. A one-armed man could still teach a child how to read animal tracks. A woman with damaged hips could still show someone exactly how deep to dig for edible roots. Contribution was never only physical. It never had to be. Now think about how this echoes into your own life, right now, in a world of hospitals, wheelchairs, and retirement homes. The instinct to look after someone who cannot keep pace with everyone else. The discomfort you feel walking past someone struggling alone. The guilt of not calling an aging parent back quickly enough. None of that is a modern invention, a product of soft, comfortable, 21st century living, as some people like to claim. It is closer to the opposite. It is one of the oldest, most tested behaviors your species has. It is older than agriculture, older than writing, older possibly than language itself in its full modern form. It was already running through a small band of humans 45,000 years ago, kneeling in a cave in Iraq, tearing meat into smaller pieces for a man who could no longer do it himself. So picture it again, one last time. You break your leg. Not a clean break, a shattering one. There is no hospital, no cast, no painkillers beyond chewed bark and someone's steady hands. But this time, you understand something your ancestors already knew in their bones. Quite literally. You are not being left behind. Someone, somewhere down a line stretching back tens of thousands of years, already decided that carrying you was worth it. And so, quietly, without needing to be asked, someone kneels down beside you and starts to carry you now,